So now we'll see about how we can calculate cost of capital using CAPM model. So cost of equity using CAPM model, that is capital asset pricing model. So this is the data that is given in the problem. It's about two data are given. First is risk-free rate. That is we'll take for the serial number 1. That is for company 1. We'll take the risk-free rate is 2.25%. Market return is 7.75%, and beta is 1.28%. As far as the company 2 is concerned, the risk-free rate is 3 and market return is 7% and beta is 1.8%. So this is the data that is given in the problem. Let us calculate CAPM for company 1 as well as company 2. So now for company 1, how to calculate the cost of capital using what you call as this CAPM model. We know the formula just now in the previous sessions we have seen that KE equal to risk-free rate plus RM minus RF into beta. That is the formula through which we can calculate what we call as the risk-free rate. This is the formula. KE equal to RF plus RM minus RF into beta. This is the formula through which we can calculate cost of equity using CAPM model. So now the first the first three columns are nothing but, that is second and third and as well as the fourth columns are nothing but the data which is given in the problem. The risk-free rate, market rate and RM as well as the beta. So this data is given in the problem. So now first let us calculate RM minus RF. So RM for company 1 is 7.5 and RF is 2.5. So 7.75 minus 2.25 is 5.5. That is RM minus RF we have calculated. Next, with this RM minus RF, we have to multiply this beta value. That is 5.5 multiplied with 1.28, you will be getting 7.0. Then finally, we have to calculate cost of equity. Cost of equity, this is the formula. K equal to RF plus RM minus RF into beta. So which means RF for company 1 is 2.25. 2.25 plus RM minus RF into beta. That is this 7.04. So 2.25 multiplied with 7.04, you will be getting around 9.2%. RF, that is the risk-free return, what you call as a 2.25 plus 7.04. That is, when you add these two, you'll be getting 9.29%. So this is the cost of capital or cost of equity calculation using CAPM model. In the same way, for company 2, it has to be calculated. So in the same way, 3 risk-free rate or market return 7% as well as the beta 1.8. All the three were given. So we have to calculate as usual RM minus RF we have to find out. RM is 7 and RF is 3. 7 minus 3 is 4. Then RM minus RF into beta. So which means 4 multiplied with the beta 1.8. If you multiply these two, you'll be getting 7.2. Then next thing is, with this RM minus RF into beta, you have to add the risk-free rate. So that is what this formula. So 7.2 plus 3, we will be getting 10.2%. So that is why it's been mentioned here. Cost of equity is 9.29 for company 1 as well as 10.2 for company 2. So this is a calculation of cost of equity using CAPM model. So next is cost of retained earnings. So we may be wondering about whether will there be any cost for retained earnings, because it's company's own fund plowing back of their own profit. Will there be any cost involved in that? Definitely a cost involved in retaining the what you call as the earnings which they have earned in the previous year. So this cost of retained earnings, this is retained earnings is nothing but the internal equity of the firm. The opportunity cost of retained earnings is the rate of return foregone by equity shareholders. So which means, for example, the equity shareholders, for example, they would have, if dividend is given, they would have received some percentage of dividend as a return from the particular, what do you call it, the share or from the earnings of a particular company. Suppose if the return is not given, that is, if dividend is not given to the shareholders, then they would have used this retained earnings in some other investments. So that is nothing but opportunity cost of retained earnings is the rate of return foregone by equity shareholders. So that is nothing but the cost of retained earnings. The shareholders normally get dividend and capital gain from the investment. The cost of retained earnings is determined by dividend valuation model under normal, zero growth as well as supernormal growth status. So this is about the cost of retained earnings. So the next thing is the very important one, weighted average cost of capital. So it has got different names, weighted average cost of capital, or we can say as overall cost of capital, or we can say as composite cost of capital. The different names are there. So actually the companies, they do not depend on single source of finance. We cannot say that companies, they depend on only equity, or they'll depend on only debt. So we cannot say like that. They depend a combination of different sources of finance. They can go for preference share, they can go for retained earnings. All these things are different sources of finance that is available for a company. So they get financed by debt, preference share, equity share, and retained earnings. So it's very important for the company to calculate WACC. Calculating cost of debt is a separate procedure. So individually cost of debt alone we can calculate. Calculating cost of preference share is a separate one. Cost of equity again a separate one, and cost of retained earnings. All together, put together, we have to find out a single variable or single value that shows the weighted average of our average cost of capital. So with the weight included. So that comprises of WACC, or overall cost of capital, or we can say composite cost of capital. So that is why it's been mentioned in the next one. It's otherwise called as overall cost of capital or composite cost of capital. And WACC should be calculated on after tax cost basis. After paying the tax, what is the cost involved in that? That should be used for WACC. So it can be calculated using book value as weight as well as market value. So we know the meaning of book value as well as a market value. Book value is nothing but at the time of purchase of a particular asset or share or whatever investment, at the time of purchase, what the value is called the book value. The same asset or security at present value is the market value. And these are all the steps that are involved in calculating the WACC. Calculate the cost of specific sources of fund, multiply the cost of each source by its proportion to the capital structure, add the weighted component cost, and to get WACC. So this is the calculating the cost of capital is a very simple procedure. We can calculate in the next sessions. So this is again what you call as the features of or the importance and usage of WACC. So this WACC plays a major role in all aspects for the evaluation of projects and for evaluating it's for investment decision. Whatever may be the decision, this WACC plays a major role. So now let me explain about how to calculate overall cost of capital, that is WACC, weighted average cost of capital. The weighted average cost of capital can be calculated either from a book value or from a market value. So in this problem, the data is given related to Gemini Limited. The following capital structure is given, and we need to calculate WACC. Here the source is given. The sources like the different sources from which they have mobilized their fund: equity share capital, then preference share capital, debentures, retained earnings. And the amount is given like from equity share capital, how much they have sourced, preference share capital 3 lakhs, debentures 2.4 lakhs, and retained earnings 16,000. And after tax cost of capital also is given. Like for equity share, the after tax cost is 13%, preference share 8%, debentures 5%, retained earnings 9%. So we need to calculate weighted average cost of capital. So how to calculate is first write down the sources that is given in the problem. So all the 4 sources from which the company mobilized, and what are the fund, how much fund they have mobilized from each and every sources. That also should be mentioned in the second column. Then the total of all the amount, the funds which have the source 6 lakhs plus 3 plus 2.4 lakhs plus 60,000 together comes around 12 lakhs. The next thing is we need to find out the weight. Weight is nothing but the proportion. The proportion from which each and every source is mobilized. For example, proportion is nothing but the weights. For example, how to calculate the weight or proportion for equity share capital is the 6 lakhs divided by the total 12 lakhs. Out of 12 lakhs, what is the weight of equity share capital or proportion of equity share capital? So 6 lakh by 12 lakhs is 0.5. Similarly, 3 lakhs by 12 lakhs comes around 0.25. Then similarly, 2.4 lakhs divided by 12 lakhs comes around 0.2, and 60,000 divided by 12 lakhs comes around 0.05. So this is the total weight or proportion of each and every source of the fund. The next is after tax cost of capital. Here after tax is given. The weighted average cost of capital should be calculated with the help of after tax cost of capital alone. This is after tax, what is the cost? That alone we are supposed to use. So here it is given 13, 8%, 5 as well as 9. So since it is given in percentages, we are converted like this. The next step will be multiplying the proportion with the cost. That is third column multiplied with the fourth column. That will give you the weighted cost. 0.50 multiplied with 0.13, you will be getting 0.065. Similarly, 0.25 multiplied by 0.08, you will be getting 0.02.
So like that, we need to multiply for all the four sources. Then we have to add all the weights. All the weights, if you add weighted cost, if you add together, you will be getting 0.0995. So this we have to multiply with 100 because weighted average cost of capital we have to show in the form of a percentage. So we have to multiply with 100. So you'll be getting 9.95 percentage. So this is the individual cost. Individual cost of capital for equity. Cost of equity is 13. Cost of preference share is 8. Cost of debt is 5%, and cost of retained earnings is 9%. Whereas together overall cost of capital or weighted average cost of capital for this company comes around 9.95%. So the next thing is, see, this is again another type of problem to calculate a composite cost of capital and to find out the optimum debt equity mix. So here, what is the data given in the problem is, in considering the most desirable capital structure for a company, the following estimates of cost of debt and cost of equity or equity capital have been made at various levels of debt equity mix. You are required to determine the optimum debt equity mix of the company by calculating composite cost of capital. So we have to find out what is the optimum debt equity mix for this particular company, as well as what is the weighted average cost of capital. So we have to find out the minimum weighted average cost of capital so that we can identify what is the best optimum debt equity mix. So now what is given in the problem is debt as a percentage of total capital is given, then total capital employed is given, then cost of debt is given, then cost of equity is given. So now composite cost of capital can be calculated. So this is the proportion of debt that is given in the problem. So the proportion of debt is what is the percentage of called as a debt as well as the percentage of the equity as well as the cost of debt as well as cost of equity is given. So as per the problem, the proportion of debt is given as 0.00, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, 0.6. What this means is they are using 0% debt. The next is 10% debt, then 20% debt, 30, 40% debt, 50 as well as 60% debt. So that is the proportion. Proportion means the weightage of each and every what you call as the combinations of debt under different categories 0, 10, 20 like that. So now after mentioning the proportion of debt, that is the weight of debt, the next will be cost of debt. This is also given in the problem. So if the debt is 0, then the cost is 5%, the debt is 10%, the cost is 5, like that the cost of debt is given. The next step is weighted cost of debt we have to calculate. That is, we need to multiply proportion of debt multiplied with the cost of debt. That is 0 multiplied 0.0 multiplied with 5 is 0. 0.1 multiplied with 5 is 0.5. So like that 0.2 multiplied with 5 is 1. Like that we have multiplied all the values for different proportion of debt, that is weighted cost of debt. The next is proportion of equity. So this is not given in the problem. So how to find out is, see, if proportion of debt is 0, then automatically 100% will be from proportion of equity. So if suppose if proportion of debt is 10%, that is 0.1, then the balance will be from equity. Similarly, if the debt proportion or weightage is 0.2, then the balance they will be getting from 0.8. Similarly, the last one, if proportion of debt is 0.6, then they will be getting the balance from equity, that is 0.4. The next thing is cost of equity is given in the problem. Cost of equity will be just multiply. So that is given in the problem like 12, 12, 12.5, 13, like that it is given. The next is weighted cost of equity we need to find out. How to find out weighted cost of equity is 1 multiplied with 12, then 0.9 multiplied with the 12, like that we need to multiply the proportion of equity multiplied with cost of equity. Then last step will be we have to find out the composite cost of capital. How to find out composite cost of capital is we need to add, for example, weighted cost of debt plus the weighted cost of equity. So when you add these two, you will be getting composite cost of capital. That is column number 3 plus column number 6. 0 plus 12 is 12. Then 0.5 plus 10.8 is 11.3. 1 plus 10 is 11. 1.65 plus 9.1 is 10.5. So like that we need to add the composite cost of capital for different proportion of debt and equity. So the next will be, we have to find out the optimal debt equity mix. How to find out optimal debt equity mix is, see which is, see, from this composite cost of capital, we need to identify which is the least composite cost of capital. Among all the proportions, 10.75 is the least composite cost of capital. The corresponding debt equity mix is 3.3 is to 7, which means 30% debt and 70% equity. So that is what it means is, if company goes for whatever the amount of fund or source they require, so if they go for 30% debt and 70% equity, then they will reach the optimum debt equity mix with the minimum composite cost of capital, that is minimum weighted average cost of capital. So that is what we have solved with the help of this composite cost of capital problem.